Welcome back to the show. In recent news, the New York State court system has made a decision to decrease social distancing measures while still requiring face coverings as part of a push to move towards resuming normal operations and to hopefully clear out its backlogs. The question is, moving forward. Well, joining us now to share more information on that and then some, we are pleased to have attorney and host of Today's Verdict right here on BronxNet, David Lesch, who's here with us, and he's also our legal analyst. And so, David, good to have you.
Always good to see you, Darren.
Listen,
backlog, I don't even know where to begin in terms of the cases. There are so many cases that really need to move, that are just sitting in different parts of the courthouse. So the question is, how do we catch up? And that's really what my clients have been asking me. What are we going to do, Mr. Lesch, to move my case along? Because you keep telling me that the court system has been slow. You haven't been able to get in to do different conferences. And, I like my case to settle. And what I tell them is really what I want your viewers to know is, yes, it's true. I have not been in the courthouse to be able to conference cases, but this virtual, world that we've been living in, that we're all living in, is going to continue even after the pandemic. So my preliminary conferences, my compliance conferences, my pretrial conferences, I really think even when the court system kind of gets back to the way it was in terms of moving things along, a lot of these conferences are going to stay virtual the way we are right now, you and I. So what's changing, or what I see changing, is going to be the ability to get more trials done. I think most of these judges who were conferencing your cases through preliminary conferences and the compliant conferences to move discovery along will not be there to do that for us anymore. And they won't be there to move our cases and settle them anymore. When you want to do that, private mediations, working it out with your adversary, but those judges are now going to be assigned, I think, to trial parts. So we're going to have more trials than we've ever had, because trials are what moves the backlog. Because when you have the threat of a trial, that's when money comes on a case, and that's when you eventually settle the case. And if we have more judges available, and we're allowing jurors to come in with masks and attorneys to come in with masks to try the cases, that's how we're going to move the cases. But the conferences that used to be, that's not going to happen anymore. We're going to be conferencing. I have 2 or 3 a day, just like this, where I have an adversary, a judge, a court reporter, a clerk, sometimes my client, and we're all on together talking about ways to move the case, not settle the case, but discovery sometimes. But the way I've been settling cases is through private mediation. So the courthouse is changing. The court system is changing. It's a radical change. You're not going to see lawyers going in there with 100 lawyers packed into a courtroom and waiting to go in front of a desk to see a court attorney to move discovery. Those days are over, because this is working better. But is it going to be better in terms of moving files? That time will tell. And that's, I think, the best answer I can give you in terms of where I think the court system is really going at this point.
I want to switch fronts for a minute and have an opportunity to share with you. Recently, you had an opportunity to talk to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and he spoke out in regards to the recent Bronx fire that left 17 dead and others injured. It was one of the most tragic fires that we've seen here in our borough. Take us inside that conversation a little bit with the senator, and what was your takeaway?
Well, he gave me an in-person interview, about 8 minutes, which was nice to meet him downtown in the Midtown office lobby area. We talked about the legislation he and Richie Torres are sponsoring that would really protect those who are living in these high-rise buildings from the type of tragedy that occurred last month. And that included he was talking about what's called a 4-point plan. And part of that plan includes forcing landlords to have doors that automatically close. And as you know, the failure of the door in question to close was what caused the fire to spread and have all these deaths that occurred. So they would be mandatory that these particular doors would actually close, and that they would go through the legislation. If it passes, the federal legislation, they'd be allowed to go into the New York State buildings, not necessarily Section 8, only Section 8, but at least with the Section 8 buildings, we know that they'd be. So it's almost letting the federal government into the New York State buildings when it comes to like the Section 8 type of monies there. The second type of way that they would protect the tenants would be to make these smoke heaters. Remember that it was a smoke heater, these portable smoke heater that caught on fire. They'd have a switch that automatically makes the space heater go off no matter what after a certain amount of time. So you couldn't fall asleep with the space heater on. You couldn't leave and go to to the store and leave it on. It would automatically have an off mechanism, which would be very, very important. Sprinklers, that was another very important part of the 4-point plan. Mandatory sprinklers throughout these buildings. A lot of these buildings were built before 1972. There's no mandatory legislation on the books that say you have to have sprinklers. That would be changed. And also a federal government agency would be overlooking how these buildings are being handled. Right now, the federal government doesn't come in. Only New York State, not federal government. So this is a major, major sweeping legislation. And I'm hoping it passes because it's only going to help Bronx residents when it comes to protecting themselves from these tragedies, because we can't have this happen again. And we can. And there's so many rundown buildings in the Bronx that need legislation that will protect their tenants, my clients, our people in the Bronx. And the senator was very open and candid. And you could see how upset he was when he talked about the coffins that he saw, of the little kids he saw in the coffins. So he was very broken up. And it was a strong interview that he gave me. I was, I was moved. I really was.
What can we anticipate coming down the pike, given the fact that we know about this door? We know that people are saying, listen, there's some culpability here by way of lawsuits. Can we begin to see a barrage of lawsuits coming from tenants in that building, possibly even a class action suit?
We've already seen it. We've already seen attorneys file on this, and they're right. They should file. There were a lot of missteps here. A lot of landlords knew about issues within their building, doors that did not necessarily close, that should close. So, I mean, if they were given notice, certainly. Don't you think that the landlord should be responsible if you told the landlord, hey, my door stays open, and now that door ended up not closing, and because of that, so many people passed away? Yeah, and I see this similar to the Harlem explosion case. I represent a few of the victims of that explosion. I think this could turn into a class action as well. I'm not necessarily entitled class action, but working as if it's a class action,
right?
With one judge looking at all these cases together, all of them filed that have the same subject matter, the particular fire in question. I see that happening, and it's going to be, I'm sure, years and years of legislation, years and years of litigation before we finally find out where we're heading with respect to the fire.
You kind of answered my question there, because when we talked about litigation, we just began the segment talking about the backlog of cases. But given the fact that this is recent, and I know it's on the hearts and minds of a lot of people, and people are looking for justice and some answers and possibly some reciprocity in a quick kind of way, you can anticipate that in this particular case, with regards to this particular fire, that we'll be at this for years.
Years, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe longer. I mean, when you have, these many people who've been impacted, who died tragically, money just doesn't, flow. It's a lot of deposition testimony that has to be taken, medicals, history, economic loss, what type of work the person did, so much. So yes, unfortunately, it will take years for a tragedy like this to really, to get to the point where hopefully the case settles. And if it doesn't settle, the lawyers will try the case in the process.
What's it like for you? I mean, given the fact that we've been talking about this backlog, I know that you've got clients that you're representing. You've got things that you really have that you want to put on the table, and some stuff that's still hanging in abeyance. What's it been like for you as a lawyer, as we're prayerfully coming towards the end of this pandemic, but yet and still not to the end of the lingering effects?
Well, it's been the same type of thing. We've been, my brother and I and my father, we've been able to move our cases that are, usually somewhere between a 50,000, let's say, to a $250,000 settlement. We're able to move them fairly easily. It's the ones that are over 500,000 that are worth that kind of money. 500,000, a million, those really big cases, they're tougher to move because you need the threat of a trial to move those cases. And they're just such a backlog. So those cases are tougher, and we've been going to private mediation to see if we can be able to do that, and the clients know it. But certainly the cases that are worth below 250, we've been settling those cases. Everyone's been wanting to settle those cases, so my clients have been happy, and we have been getting in, new work, new business. People are out there again, and unfortunately they're having accidents. Things are happening. So, as a firm, we're kind of really back to where we were in terms of and how we're working. Our staff is still working hard here, and we're always here for our clients. We always have been here since 1963, and to still be here. Go Brown.
We talked before the last time that we gathered, and we said that your advice to clients sometimes is, if you're looking for some sort of answer, you probably want to take the settle route, except in extreme cases. Do you still abide by that thought?
I do. I always find settling cases a lot of times is in your best interest. Now, if you're not being offered the true value or close to the true value, then no, then you wait it out. But if you need the money, you're not doing well financially, you can't get a loan, can't get food on the table, and sometimes it pays to take the settlement. You take the money that's on the table. Don't wait 2 years, 3 years. City of New York, you might wait 4 years, 5 years now. You take the money. And I discuss it with my clients, but ultimately I work for them. They're the boss. But a lot of times that's my advice. They ask me my advice, and that's what I tell them. I say to them, look, I have 600, 700 cases, 800 cases in my office. I can afford to lose this case. I can afford to not get paid. But can you afford to not get paid to get your money on this case? You only have one case. I have 800 cases if I need to make money off of. This is your one case. Can you really afford not to take this money right now? And that's when they think to themselves, you may be right. And that's when they change their mind.
Yeah. Before we go, talk to me. If somebody's out there right now and they're saying, listen, I've got an issue and I might go before the court system, I bring it to you. Say I've got this legal issue, I bring it to you, and I say, David, I want you to represent me. What's the time frame between the time that I get to you and possibly even getting to a court?
Listen, if I were signing you up right now as a new client, Daren, and I was talking to you, I'd say, look, Daren, I want to tell you, I want to give it to you straight right now. This is going to be a long process. You have at least 2, maybe 3 years minimum before I may be seeing money on your case. I said, and that's only because the court's so backlogged that for me to get the pressure on them, it could take that long. It doesn't mean that I can't go to private mediation after a year, once we get your deposition done, and I know what the value of your case is, a year, year and a half. But if things come up and there's discovery issues, or you need a surgery, an additional surgery, it's going to delay the case. So, Daren, you got to be patient with me, okay? I'm there for you. Just because you don't hear from me doesn't mean I'm not working on the case. Just understand that it's going to take some time. It's going to take time for all of us. You just got to be patient. It's a new world we're living in. That's what I would tell you, my new client.
Well, great advice from our legal analyst. That's why we bring you on, to give us a little tips and information to let us know where we are. And certainly, we know that just like everything else, there's a backlog. And so we have to be patient with the court system. David Lesch, our legal analyst and also the host of today's verdict, thank you so much for joining us here on Open. Now, tell people before we leave how they can find today's verdict and where they can catch it.
Listen, you can always catch today's verdicts on Friday nights. It airs sometimes at 8, it airs sometimes at 9. But they repeat it many, many times throughout the Bronx on FiOS, Channel 33, Spectrum, I believe it's 69. They show it in Manhattan. Manhattan picks it up. And you can always Google it. You just Google today's verdict. You can see all our episodes. We've interviewed mayors, all the candidates for mayor, state senators, council people. Just interviewed the Senator Schumer. And you have a ton of lawyers. So check it out. Today's verdict, anytime.
All right, David Lesch, we'll leave it there. Good to see you, my brother. Stay safe and best wishes to the family.
You too, Daren, Latricia. It's always good seeing you.
All righty, David Lesch, our guest here on Open. Stay with us. We do have more more open coming up right after this, after I get my tongue untied. We'll be right back in a minute.